I don't think I can, okay. You might be able to look at it on your phone, but if I look at it while I'm Zooming, it'll like,
but it's there.
Perfect, it's there, we're live.
We're live.
Good. There is so from us Zooming from the inside Zoom to Facebook, there's a delay.
Okay.
Just in case you pull it up, it's going to be like backtracking a little bit.
Okay.
But there we go. We'll get this thing rocking and rolling as people start catching up.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's set this up. Here's what's happening today, all of you, all of us. So we all know that there's quite a bit happening with Black Lives Matter and race and diversity, and obviously politics are always going to get thrown into that. And what we want to kind of go over is, as studio owners inside the fitness industry, where diversity and race is into that kind of that wedge, that pie of everything else that's happening. So this isn't really going to be like I think we're going to try to stay in our lane about the fitness industry and try to focus on that. Is that an easy way to, like, I guess one way of putting it?
Right.
Yeah.
Not there to talk about, so.
There's a lot to talk about. Yeah. So we'll try to, yeah.
And we'll still have a lot to talk about, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it first, when the Blackout Tuesday happened, we found ourselves like, okay, post a black square and, let that day be what that's used for, and let the people talk that need to talk and get their message out. And that was kind of the intention behind it, which also took us most of the day to understand that, because it wasn't really like anyone, at least we didn't feel like we knew what was happening. And maybe that's because of what we follow or the circles we're in, but we were kind of just following a suit. Like, well, this seems like the thing, right? And at the end of that day and to the next morning, our own conversations with ourselves, we thought, well, what are we actually doing? You see a lot of people on the internet with a lot of topics, right? It's always just a bunch of running their faces, but who's actually taking action? Like, what's actually happening? Are we really having tough conversations? Or are we just yelling our opinions on social media? And the yelling opinions on social media, it was like, you kind of think about what that would be like in real life. It'd be like us just walking around a big mall, just shouting one phrase at each other back and forth and never really understanding each other and having a conversation about things. And then I also thought, and this has been a question that we've had for a long time, is inside the fitness industry, why does it seem to be such a straight white male or female based industry? And is that is that something that the industry is doing wrong, or is it just something the industry hasn't done right enough of? I could see where it'd be easy to make people feel like they weren't including right. People who aren't in shape, right? That's a normal thing for us as studio owners. It's like, do you post pictures of people that are in shape, or do you post pictures of people who are out of shape? Because you don't want to feel like you're excluding anyone.
Right.
And I think that kind of spills over into a little more sensitive subjects, especially with male, female, and gay or straight, or persons of color, or non-persons of color, whatever that may be. And so we wanted to start having conversations about what is it that the fitness industry is doing wrong or right, and what is it about studio owners that we are doing to put things into the right direction, or are we doing things that we don't know is putting us in the wrong direction?
Right. And what can we do to get us going in the right direction? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
we're interviewing, right? We're interviewing a fellow studio owner, and we want to get a different perspective than our own, because otherwise, how do we really learn? Because our own perspective is going to be skewing our perceptions on everything, no matter what, good or bad. Good. Did I do a good job? Is that
was
it?
awesome.
That was great. Yeah. So, yeah. What's next, Sean?
So what's next? So let's start.
What's next?
Let's start from the beginning, and let's
Okay.
talk about you personally and inside the fitness industry, either your own personal journey, your journey as a fitness business owner, and then moving forward continually as a person of color running a business. So give us a background a little bit about if you felt along your entire fitness journey from being a student to being an owner, have you felt like you have a different uphill climb than someone that's a non-person of color? Or do you feel like it was harder for you to get into fitness?
Mhm.
Or do you feel like it was harder for you to get into owning a business as a person of color?
Okay. Cool. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. Hi. I'm Michelle Collier. I know it says so in the caption, but I'm just going to like formally introduce myself. I'm Michelle Collier. I own Performance Fitness, which is a studio right outside of Philadelphia. It's in a suburb of Philadelphia called Wynwood. We work with women primarily, but we work with men too. And our focus is on strength, on helping our clients build strength so that they can be strong, not only in the gym, but outside in the real world, doing whatever they have to do in life, whether it's, being strong physically, emotionally, mentally. I really truly believe that physical strength helps to build emotional and mental strength as well. So that's what we do. Right now I am in my office at home, which is actually the same color as my office in the studio. But in our part of Pennsylvania, we are still on we're not on a stay-at-home order anymore, but my business is still shut down. So we've been doing everything online via Zoom. So I've been spending a lot of time at home. So here we are. So that just explains that, why you might see like old artwork from my kid in the room, or my laundry. Anyway, so to answer your first question, so I think you were asking about was, harder to get into strength or fitness. Being a person of color, I prefer being referred to as a Black person. Person of color to me is like a catch-all for Black people and non-Black, brown people, Southeast Asian people, whatever. So, but anyway, but I can also speak, to person.
Already learned something.
Right. Yeah.
No, there you go. But that is my preference. So did I find it harder? No, not because of the color of my skin. And I think, but this is just me, because when I got into fitness, first as a student and then later as an instructor, then as a trainer, and then as a business owner, so the fitness industry in general is a predominantly white space. Let's just put that out there. That's not to say that there aren't Black and non-Black people of color in fitness, but they aren't the people who are often featured, that you see at workshops or conferences being, widely featured. But the reason that I didn't necessarily feel that, for me personally, it was harder or maybe intimidating or whatever you want to say, is because I'm very used to being in predominantly white spaces. I went from second grade, I guess, through college, even grad school, predominantly white schools. I, did musical theater from the time I was in third grade through high school. I used to be an opera singer. So, all spaces that, don't have a lot of Black people and people of color. So for me, just as a matter of, can I do this or can I be around these people? It wasn't, it wasn't a big deal. That's not to say that when I saw another Black person or brown person, that it wasn't something that was comforting or welcome. you know, or that I yearned for, but definitely a space that I was used to being in. But, you know, so I got my first certification in 2003, and everything that I went to, if it was a conference, a certification, whatever, and especially then, since I was doing mostly group fitness, group exercise, you know, it was mostly women, mostly white women. So again, I did yearn to see people who looked like me. And there was a concern as I became certified, like, because there weren't a lot of people who looked like me in terms of prospective clients, would they take me seriously? Would I have credibility with them being this, you know, obviously Black woman, you know, being someone who's not, you know, skinny. I guess you could say athletically built, which is weird because I don't consider myself athletic, being picked class and gym class in high school. But, you know, who doesn't have, like, I'm curvy and I'm very proud of that. But, you know, I'm not skinny, and, you know, I had a big butt before it became a big butt. So definitely was that sort of intimidation of whether people would take me seriously. And I definitely felt a need to, like, prove myself, you know, and prove that I knew what I was talking about and prove that I was smart. So there was that. And I guess the last thing I would say to that would be, I remember I was thinking about, like, my first website. So I probably had my first website done in like 2005. And so, like, back then, you know, it was sort of like, well, you should have a picture of yourself on your website, but you can get away with it if you don't, right? If you just have stock photos that are representative. It's very different than today, where I guess, you know, social media has forced me and any other camera shy person to be like, hey, here I am, here's my picture again. But back then, I just, you know, I don't like taking pictures or don't like being in pictures. So I didn't want my picture on the website. So I you know, went through stock photos. I found this photo of a woman, a Black woman, over, you know, bending backwards, like doing a back bend over a stability ball. And I told my web designer that was the photo I want. And she said, you know, she looked, you know, through it. She said, oh, well, that one's really expensive. So I found you a similar photo. And it was all white women. And I went back to her, and, you know, I know that she didn't mean any harm, but I said, you know, it's really important to me that this Black woman is on the homepage of the website, because she is a representation of me. So I don't care how much the photo cost, that's the picture I want. At the time I was doing in-home personal training. So that was another thing. I'm like, I need people to know that a Black woman's going to show up at their door. Because I, you know, for some people present differently, I guess you could say, over the phone. So I needed them to know that this is the person, or that there was a potential that the person that was going to show up was going to look like me. So that's my answer to that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also asked me about, you know, starting and running a business. So I guess I touched on that a little bit, but, like, you know, in terms of, in general, like, starting and running a business, Black people, other marginalized people, not to say that all white people have, like, generational wealth or, like, rich husbands or rich parents, but, you know, it is harder for Black people to get loans from a bank, to, you know, to start a business. We don't often have the resources that, you know, white people have. So from that standpoint, I mean, I didn't have loans or anything. I started the business, you know, on my own with my own funds. And because I didn't have access to those things, you know, a relative, I have white friends who, you know, their parents gave them a loan, or when their businesses got in trouble, they went to mom and dad and said, you know, I can't make payroll and I'm going to have to shut down. And, you know, mom and dad lent them or gave them, you know, $10,000 or whatever. And that's not something that when I started the business I had. So there you have it.
Right. Yeah. No. Totally understand that. We built Prevail very similar. I mean, I just happened to get lucky that I had a student who believed in what we were doing, and personally loaned me the money.
Right.
So I could see that, and we've seen that definitely.
And like I've also had, after the business was established and like after I opened the studio, like once, like I've had the brick and mortar for 5 years, and I definitely have had clients who, you know, our clients are great and who have had faith in me, and so who have definitely stepped up and helped, you know. So yeah. I'll stop talking. Sorry.
No.
No, yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
With you running a studio, this is something that I have wondered. And you talked about having like the stock photography to represent you on the website, and we all know that, right? So both of us, right? We're all in the same coaching education group, right? Under Nicole, and so we talk extensively about marketing and about speaking your authentic self and speaking to the type of person you want inside your space. And the pictures and the way you speak are to speak to a certain type of person. So having an image of someone like you, right, is going to make sure that you get a reflection of that in clients.
Right.
Or as close to as possible.
Right.
So do you think being oh yeah.
Hey!
You sparked that so fast.
That's funny.
Thank you. Hey, it's real. This is my life.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that constantly happens. Okay. Hey, we're back.
There we go.
We're back.
Love it. Do you think that I kind of want to, inside of your studio or inside your client base, is your demographic different than traditional, than the most of the fitness industry? So do you see as being, as a Black-owned business, do you find yourself attracting more Black clients than the rest of the industry, or does that make a difference at all?
Right. So my business, because of, I think primarily because of location, most of our clients are white. We are in, you know, the township that we're in, and the surrounding towns are, you know, anywhere from about 85 to above 95% white. But we are also very close to a section of Philadelphia that is predominantly Black. So we're like half a mile, I guess, maybe even less than that. So it has always been important to me to pull people in from, you know, from everywhere, but especially to bring fitness and to bring, you know, my knowledge to people who look like me. So I would say we definitely have, even though our clientele is predominantly white, we definitely have more Black and brown than other studios in the area. And, you know, speaking to that authenticity and to marketing and all of that, that's something that's always, you know, that I'm always aware of in our marketing, and representing people who, you know, who not only look like our clients, but look like the people who I want to feel welcomed coming into our studio. So it's not a matter of me necessarily saying like, oh, I want to have all Black clients, or I want to have more Black clients, or whatever the case may be. I want, you know, I want our space to be a reflection of, I don't know, I guess the world that I would like to see. And I guess also I address people because, like you said, you know, how you speak in your marketing and everything, that's a part of it as well. Like, you know, so not necessarily the language that I use, but I use, like, you know, pop references that probably a lot of people don't understand or get, or I talk the way I talk in real life, you know, and I show images of our clients. So I'm not just showing like one type of person, you know, in the images that I put out there. And I'm also, and I think this is a mistake that some, you know, fitness business owners make when they're trying to, I mean, the word diversity is in so many cases so overused, but we're going to use the word diversity. When they're trying to show it, they don't, it's limited to a specific situation. So for example, if they are marketing to women over 50,
Right.
you're going to show women over 50, right? Or your perception of what a woman over 50 looks like, which is really skewed for some people, but whatever. And and you're going to show that image, but then you only show that woman over 50 when you are marketing to women over 50. You don't show it in any of your other marketing. Same thing. It's like, you know, companies, when it's February, like, you know, they try to show a bunch of Black people in their marketing. It's you know, it's all that tokenism.
Right.
You know, that's not great for anyone, and especially, you know, in the space that we're in right now. So, you know, if people can show, and this is what I try to do, is show people like throughout the year who are either, you know, who look like our client, well, who are our clients, because I tend not to use stock images anymore. But, you know, show our clients, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, in whatever it is that I'm marketing. So, or whoever, you know, to just not show that 50 or 40 or whatever year old woman when I'm trying to, you know, market to that segment. So it's the same thing when you're trying to have diversity in your studio. Like, and I think there's, you know, there's places that really do a great job of this. I think it's about creating your culture. And like you said, being authentic in what you're doing, and not just having it be like, you know, okay, well, it's February, here's what we're doing now. So.
Right. Or, you know, it's, you know, where we are intra or post, you know, a large protest
Right.
with BLM, and so now you're seeing a ton of, I mean, all sorts of things. You notice, you look at, like, I don't know, we're watching some show, and like the commercials,
Yeah.
where, you know, you could see there's like, okay, they're making an adjustment, or you see a lot of businesses that are like, hey, look, and it seems, it's like you're trying, but it's like they're saying, look, here's our Black person, and you're like, whoa,
Exactly.
wait a minute.
Right. It's sort of like
the world's on fire. Now you're gonna say, look at her.
Exactly. It's sort of like, you know, if you ever, I mean, I know you guys don't have kids, but if you've ever looked at either, you know, a private school like website or brochure, or like, you know, college, like I remember, you know, when I was like applying for colleges or whatever, and it's like, you know, they had to like check off the box, like, okay, here's our Black person, here's, you know, here's our brown person, here's our Southeast Asian person, and it's like,
Right.
just, and that's tokenism, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Yeah. So I think that, you know, as an industry, it's not that you know, we talk about as coaches all the time, just with everything, right? It's being reactive and proactive to situations, and whatever the goal or whatever the outcome may be. And, you know, it's like, you just need to be aware and just cognitive of, look what you're showing and look how you're speaking, and kind of just review it as just constantly, right? Not that you're trying to like make up room or trying to bring up slack with something, but you may want to go, man, let me look at my last 30 images on Instagram, and am I just showing the same 3 people over and over and over again because I just like these 3 people, you know?
Right.
Or am I really showing a representation of everyone that's in here now, as well as everyone that I want to see here in the future?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Uh,
And I think it's also in our industry, and not just about like the marketing, but also building relationships. So maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe you're in a space where there's not a lot of Black people or other people of color, but you know, who you're attracting as clients, but to um, build relationships, you know, like Nicole, our coach, talks a lot about, you know, building relationships with other business owners. So, you know, doing that, like starting, like supporting Black owned businesses, and, I don't know, inviting, you know, we do this all the time, like inviting business owners to come and try out your studio. And, you know, yes, just because it's a Black owned business doesn't mean that they have a huge, you know, clientele of Black people, but you can go and, you know, support them, build a relationship, and then make that connection. And then, you know, you might be able to attract other people that way. And not with the idea of, again, tokenism or checking off those boxes. But if you really want to have a space that's, again, overused language, but we'll use it, diverse and inclusive, then it takes work to and you've got to get out of like your regular zone. So it's sort of just weird tangential analogy. It's like, you know, we talk often about supporting small business, right? And not just going to Amazon and just buying whatever. And that takes an effort. Like it takes a little bit of an effort to say, okay, I want to buy this thing, but I want to buy it at a local small business. So now I've got to do a little bit more research to be able to get whatever that item is. And it might take a little bit longer, might cost a couple dollars more, but if it's something that's important to you, then you'll make the effort to do it.
So. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's exactly.
Yeah.
I think when we've looked, like we've like stepped back and looked at the demographics and looked at, you know, the diversity. Sorry, but you know, just look at you're like, all right. I mean, do I just have a room with like 45 Seans?
Right.
What did I like? Did I do that on purpose? Or was it something that I missed along the way? Or was I just not even aware that I was
not speaking to
doing that? You know, we see,
right.
You know, as you know, just like you talked about, you work with women in your gym, but you work with, you know, men. It's almost like if you wanted to have more men in your studio because you wanted the studio to feel more masculine or more whatever, right? You would have to work harder at speaking to men.
Right.
You'd have to show more images of men. You'd have to speak to what they want in order to change the demographic that you have and the type of client you work with.
Bros are welcome in here to work out. Not that, but you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, you do have to, and I mean, I would caution against like saying, you know, oh, we want to talk like Black people. Like, that's not where we're going.
Right.
Talking to, I think, you know, it starts with like showing images that go beyond like, you know, in terms of women, go beyond skinny, blonde, and brunette women.
Right.
And I think it also means, you know, like, so if I wanted more male clients, maybe I would talk more to issues that men are concerned about or that, you know, I know that men need help with. And, you know, if I'm talking to, you know, if I'm trying to, you know, talk to Black folks about things that they may be concerned about, I might talk about certain health issues.
Right.
You know, they can, you know, mitigate, you know, through fitness and nutrition or whatever. So I think that's a part of it as well. But I mean, I think a huge part, like I said, is a lot of people talk, like you know, I follow a lot of gyms, as I'm sure you do, and a lot of people talk about diversity and inclusion on, you know, and it's like the companies are doing too. They talk about it in their marketing, they talk about it on their websites, they talk about it being a goal, and then you look and it's not there at all. It's, you know, and I'm not saying that that's purposeful. Like, I'm not saying that maybe they're necessary. I mean, I think in this new climate, current climate, but yeah, some people are just putting the language out there. But before that, you know, I'm not saying that they're not trying to be diverse and inclusive, but like, you don't see it. It's just, it's like, it's just a statement. And I think another thing, just in terms of language, just to backtrack a little bit, is also to talk about, I mean, it's hard with fitness, right? Because it's like, how much do you stay in the fitness lane? And you know, there are some fitness, you know, professionals, you know, people who have like huge social media followings, and there's like a handful of them that like don't even talk about fitness anymore. They, you know, they're
Yeah.
justice issues, and they get really criticized for that. But, you know, if that's what their passion is, and if that's what speaks to them, then, you know, why not? And then there's some people who, yes, they're still primarily talking about fitness, but they're talking about social justice as well. So I think, you know, if you have a space and if you say, I want Black folks to feel welcome here, I want, you know, LGBTQ plus people to feel, you know, welcome here, then you're going to speak out on those issues. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, that's your whole platform, but something that you can definitely talk about, so that people are like, okay, you know, I want to, you know, do a program. I want to join a gym. I've seen this place post for, you know, 3 months, and I really feel like I'll be welcome there. And, you know,
Right.
so.
Yeah. And you know, I think that both of us can agree the goal is to help people the best that we possibly can. And the last thing we want to do is to make anyone feel uncomfortable to start.
Right.
You know, that's the last thing we want to do. So we want to make sure that we're not doing anything unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It is unwelcoming. And
Right.
You just almost have to, like, you can't just do, you know, what's the minimum dose. You can't do like what's on par, or you have to push a little. You have to lean into, it's okay that you're going to feel uncomfortable. You know, you have to speak like, okay, look, I understand those issues, and we are here for those issues, but you can't ignore them.
Right. Exactly.
You can't not ever say anything about them at all, and not expect for some people to feel like they're not welcome because you never spoke to them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that you just said about being uncomfortable, I mean, we talk about that in fitness all the time, about being uncomfortable, about, you know, you're not going to, you know, I mean, what is perfect form, but, you know, we could have a whole discussion about that, but, you know, you're not going to be like perfect, you know, from the outset or whatever. And it's the same thing with all of this. It's like, we have to be able to, you know, truly combat racism. Like, it goes beyond like, okay, let's all love each other and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It's got to be like, all right, you know, we've got to have conversations. And they're going to be awkward and uncomfortable and painful, but it's something that has to be done. And if you think about it as more of like a relationship, you know, a marriage or whatever, like, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I mean, we felt that way starting this conversation. We both had our hesitations, and we're like, man, I hope I don't say the wrong thing. I hope I say the right thing. I hope I'm asking the wrong questions. I don't want to be like, I don't want to be offensive or insensitive without knowing it. But at the same time,
but I don't know, and I want to learn, and
exactly.
We do the things, and
so, and I think in terms of like, you know, we all, whatever the group is, like, we all make mistakes, and like being willing to listen and own up to those mistakes and apologize for them and listen to marginalized people when they're talking. So for me as, a cis-het woman, if I'm talking to a trans woman or if I'm talking to a gay man and I say something, I have to be willing to like listen and accept what they're saying and apologize and do better.
Right.
And yeah, so.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I want to talk about outside of kind of our zoomed in specific situations within being, studio owners and we have both of our studios very similar in the fact that it's a high relationship environment.
Right.
So neither one of us run places where we know every single person who's in our studio.
Right.
So we have a lot of relationship with people. But when you really if you zoom way out and you look at fitness and you look at demographics of fitness and you look at health and you look at, in the Black community, there's a higher rate of diabetes and heart disease, and why is it that the Black community has a higher rate of diabetes and heart disease? Like what's happening inside of the community that those type of health aspects are different? And is it a thing of economics? And if it is a thing of economics with, the straight white male being predominant, in the past, what I think has happened is I think that fitness has always felt out of touch for a lot of people for economic reasons, because fitness started way back with people who could only afford to go to the country club, or only people that were part of gigantic gyms or gigantic, health clubs. And then it's always been an extra expense, right? And we see a lot of people who, I'm trying to watch my words.
Watch your words,
Trying
sir.
to watch my words.
Watch your words.
I
don't know what he's getting at.
don't feel comfortable with fitness because it automatically categorizes them into something pretentious.
Okay, so the first part of your question about, and I think this will kind of answer the broad aspects of it as well. So, the diseases that are, more prevalent in the Black community, like you said, diabetes, heart disease. I think a big part of that is not economics necessarily, right? But it's kind of either, it's cultural or tradition. So if you grow up in a family where you're eating certain foods and whatever, like you could grow up, be Black, be in a regular middle class family, and if the food that prefer, or that you're used to eating, or that you're presented with is food that's not going to help you prevent getting diabetes or heart disease, then you're going to have diabetes or heart disease. If it's something that runs, that runs in your family, you're going to end up with it. So, using myself as an example, high blood pressure runs on both sides of my family. Everybody has high blood pressure, and I fought off high blood pressure for years. And then 2 years ago, my doctor was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, can I just do whatever? If I change this, do that, and whatever. She said, you're healthy. You were going to get it. It was pretty much not a matter of if, it was just when. And so continue to go out there and be healthy, but you got to take this little pill every day. And, that's, like I said, it runs on both sides of my family. So it's like my friends who are, who are white, colon cancer runs through their family and they have to get checked, you know, when they're 35 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not just an economic thing, right? But yes, also, P.S., economics can play into it. So if you are living in a community where you don't have access to healthy food, you know, if you're living in a food desert, if you're not being educated about healthy food, if you're living in a community where, you know, maybe you're not getting outside as much for whatever reason or exercising for whatever reason, then yeah, like, so I think it's more than just, you know, not to be flippant, but I think it's more than, or it's not, you know, Black people are poor, so they have all these diseases. I think it's, you know, a combination of things. And then in terms of, you know, fitness, I think, you know, in particularly fitness as like a personal service, yes, I mean, it is something that started out for just the elite. And so I think that's why we have to, and it's still viewed that way by many people. And so that's why we have to really be conscious of reaching out to people. So a Facebook friend in another group, you know, I'm sure you guys are aware of like the whole CrossFit debacle. And, you know, part of what CrossFit tried to use as their, you know, kind of, we hear about Black people was like, oh, well, we do CrossFit in prisons. And my Facebook friend, who is a CrossFit owner and who's Black as well, you know, basically she said there are plenty of Black people who can afford CrossFit. Like,
Yeah.
Having this kind of white savior narrative of, well, we go do it in prisons, or we have this program that's for inner city kids. Like, no, that's not, you know, that's not being inclusive or like, you know, or being diverse. That's, you know, being the white savior. But, you know, there are plenty of Black people who can afford CrossFit or who can afford, you know, our gym or whatever. They just have to feel welcomed. There's a reason, you know, why you just have to feel welcome. You have to, like, you know, there's a reason why some people choose to live in maybe communities that say, you know, maybe don't have as good of a school system, let's say. The community, you know, looks more like them because they don't feel over other communities because no one looks like them. So, so yeah, so to get beyond like, okay, now we have to go run a program in the inner city or whatever. Not that that's not a great thing to do. I mean, as I think as fitness business owners, we should be reaching out and helping people. However, but yeah, we absolutely can. There are people who aren't going to view, who can't afford our services, is what I'm trying to say. So
right, yeah, and I think the economic side of it, regardless of race, is that you just, if you look at an economic area and you can tell where there's a higher average salary than other, you just see the different types of businesses that are located inside of those areas. And that comes through all facets, you know, outside of fitness and health and food and access and grocery stores. And I mean, everything's different. But I think what I was, has that been like a, from a lower economic standpoint with,
find your word.
Trying to make sure
I definitely don't have the words.
I hate
find them.
I hate conveying the wrong type of question. That's not what I'm trying to say. Anyways, we'll
you'll figure out your words and write them to me. Oh my gosh, family is like going to, hold on. Sorry, you guys. This is real. So see, real. This is real.
This is real.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. Hold on a second. I cannot talk. Bye. Oh, nope, still being interviewed. Bye. I am so professional. Oh my God. Okay, we're going to turn the phone off.
All right. Well, there may be, okay. I don't think,
So really just speaking more.
yeah, I think
It's like how.
I think one of the things that you, or just like real quick, one thing that I would want to address,
mm-hmm.
you know, so there's this idea, like, what's great about this current moment is that it's really had staying power, meaning the usual trajectory of this, you know, situation is unarmed Black man gets, or Black woman gets killed by law enforcement. There's, you know, disbelief by some, there's outrage and sadness by others, there's a combination of all three by, you know, for some people, and it stays, you know, in the headlines, front of mind on social media for about a week. And then we all move on, everyone, not we, me personally, but everyone moves on to something else. What's great about this current moment is that that has not happened, at least not yet. You know, we're about 3 weeks in to everything that's been going on. And people are still speaking out. They're still marching, you know, all of these things. So it feels like, wow. And there have already been changes, and it feels like, wow, like this is something, there's like hope for once that it's not going to follow that pattern.
Right.
But I think it's important to also note for white people and for non-Black, or for, we'll say, white presenting people of color, the important thing is to educate yourselves. So one way is by, you know, like you guys are talking to me, but you know, there's a ton out there. There's resources, there's, you know, there's Google. Not that I'm necessarily like telling everybody to like get on Wikipedia, because we know how Wikipedia is as a source, but there's ways to educate yourself. So like, be willing to learn, read a book, talk to people. Don't just talk to, you know, if you can help it, like your one Black friend. Don't use your one Black friend as your encyclopedia. Like, you know, do your research. Like I said, there's resources out there, because we're dealing with our own stuff. In terms of the fitness industry, you know, there's a lot of people who write about this. There's Chrissy King, there's Sonia Herbert, or Sonia R. Price Herbert, I think is.
Air Bay or something, is it French?
Or yeah, probably saying, but her, yeah, but you know, she does Commando Fitness Collective. She's done webinars specific to the Pilates space, but it also applies to the fitness space. And you know, with racism. So she's a great resource just on Instagram, and then as well as her webinar that she does. I think she just did one, and I'm sure she's going to be doing more. So if you check out Commando Fitness Collective on Instagram, that's a great resource. And like I said, Chrissy King, her Instagram handle is I am Chrissy King. So for fitness business owners to, you know, educate themselves, you know, to do the anti-racism work. It goes beyond, you know, sharing things on Facebook and, you know, liking posts or arguing with your racist uncle. You're probably not going to change your racist uncle's mind, but you can at least let him know that what he's saying is unacceptable. It's sort of like, you know, when there was like, kind of was it third wave? I think we're at third wave feminism and you know, the Me Too movement and all of that, like, important to let women lead. Well, in this case, it's important to let Black people lead. And to, you know, I know there's an organization that's doing like some sort of anti-racism webinar or whatever, but it's completely white led. So I think it's important to let Black people lead.
Yeah.
we need your audience. So, white folks, you can bring your audience, you can bring along the white people so that they can hear and learn on this much needed information. But, learning it from those resources. So whether, learning it from us. So whether it's a book or, a webinar or whatever, like learn there first. If you want to talk to your friends about it afterwards, and have a book club or whatever, go for it, but learn from, the source. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. I know we're like live on Facebook, and I think we've been getting quite a bit of love and feedback, and a lot of people sharing, which is great. Is there? Oh, the connection. Oh goodness. Is there anyone? Does anyone have any questions? So, if you're watching now, if you're watching in the future, if there's something that you would like to ask any three of us about the topic we're talking about right now, put it down below. And if it's later on, if you're watching this in some sort of, playback, please feel free to ask us questions. And I'm sure Michelle feels the same way about keeping the dialogue going and moving forward.
Absolutely.
This moment and movement and not just a news cycle. Yeah.
Right.
Can't stop listening if we get our feelings hurt. It's not about our feelings.
Exactly. And that's often something I see from white folks, again, whenever we have this sort of thing happen, it's, the first thing is that, if they've gotten corrected or shut down by a Black person, it's sort of like, I'm out, like nothing I do is right. It's like they have a tantrum. Like I've witnessed people basically have this Facebook tantrum of like, well, if you don't want me to help the way I want to help, then I'm just not going to help. And it's not about you. So be willing to like listen, keep the conversation going, get your feelings hurt.
Yeah. No, I mean, the beginning of the call, I didn't know if it was, do I call you a Black woman, an African American, a person of color? Like, and not only that, but how would I know?
Right, exactly. And I think like in this moment, I think we need to be specific because this is a moment where we are talking about Black people. Yes, there are issues that other people of color have in common with Black people, but there are other, they don't, I don't know, a South Asian person doesn't have the same experience in America that an American born and, who has a family history in America. We don't have the same experience. And also other people of color benefit from a proximity to whiteness. They typically have more kind of positive stereotypes. And so I think it's important to be specific that when you're talking about Black people, to say Black people. If you're talking about, a general, people of color or even, Black and Indigenous people of color, then yes, we like use those broader terms. But in this moment, we're talking about Black people. So let's say Black people. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. It's just also African American, like only applies to really, like Black people here. Like if you were born in, I don't know, Jamaica, you're not going to feel like an African American. You're going to feel like a West Indian American. If you were born in Kenya, you're, even though you're from Africa, it's, what I mean? It's not going to be, it's not the same intention. The term is not the same meaning. So.
Right. Yeah. Cause that'd be like, like Danielle's from, no, she's not, but I'm saying if she's from Eastern Europe and I'm from Australia and we're what you would come like you're an Australian American and you're a Sweden American, and you're like, no, you're just both white. Like,
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that's about it. There's been some good comments. I don't think there's any direct questions.
Sorry.
What?
I talk a lot.
Well, it'd be a real awkward conversation if none of us talked, right? I mean, I know we're all pretty people, but I'm sure they'd be like, okay, guys, you might want to like speak some words now. We're tired of staring at your faces.
Stare at the camera. We can.
Cool. Well,
Um,
where can people, was that a question?
This one goes to making inclusive and welcoming spaces. What should we do to be mindful in our decor?
And our, did you say decor?
Yeah, I said, making inclusive and welcoming spaces, what should we be mindful of in our decor? I wonder if that person means like physical, like art, or like a bigger meaning of like your presence.
Yeah, I don't think there's I mean if they did really mean decor, like, you know, how the space looks, there's nothing special that I think you need to be mindful of. I think, you know, for any gyms that have, you know, photos of their clients around the gym, like whether it's before and afters or whatever, just to be aware and to, you know, have different types of people represented. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what they meant.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if decor meant something broader than.
I don't know. But maybe they'll clarify.
What are some good resources to turn to learn?
Is that what are some good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, what's a good resource? So if you had to recommend, let's just say that if you had to recommend one book, one podcast, or one, or like what would be your very first thing to go absorb?
I mean, in terms of book, probably White Fragility. And podcasts, I have no idea, but there's again tons of resources. You can Google anti-racism, you know, anti-racism podcast, and that'll, you know, give you some information. In terms of if you're looking for, like I said, you know, go to oh my gosh, why did I just forget the name of Sonia's thing? Sorry.
The Commando?
Commando Fitness Collective on Instagram. I am Chrissy King on Instagram. Those are some places to go as well. Yeah, in terms of podcasts, I don't have any recommendations, but again, you can, like, Google is your friend, so
yeah.
Google.
Okay. Do you have anything that a lot of times we'll get off of any kind of call or content or education, and 3 seconds later she goes, but I wonder if, and I'm like, why didn't you just say something? I don't know.
Well, I see you guys at least once a week, or at least
That's
you're.
true.
That's true. We do see it once a week at least.
Or you can always message if you have a question, or if someone else had a question, and, you know, I guess any questions or comments that, you know, will come up if people watch this on the replay, so we can address.
Perfect. Yeah. To summarize, basically, it's complex, but
Create relationships.
create relationships.
It's gonna be hard. Not gonna be easy.
Get out of your own way, right? Let others speak and absorb, and be patient with what you're understanding, and put yourself in a position to be understanding and to listen, and be okay that that's probably not going to be the most comfortable thing. And then from a business owner, you know, be aware of how you're speaking and be aware of what you're showing, and make sure that reflects who you want to speak to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll finish it up. And the last thing, of course, if you guys are listening, lift your weights.
Yes, lift weights, lift heavy weights.
Heavy weight.
Whoever you are, and you're listening out there,
Yes, heavy weights, heavy.
I'm a professional who can teach you to lift real weights. Stop all the 2-pound dumbbell nonsense. Let's go. Pick up a heavy bell.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it. So, yeah, at some point I have to push the end button, right?
Right.
Fix?
Yeah.
Do that, at least on Facebook and
All right. Okay. Well, Michelle,
technology.
we really, really appreciate your time,
Sure.
and we appreciate the conversation. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Bye.